Hey friends, today I'd like to share with you my top 7 favorite books that I read in 2023 in different languages. This year I read 73 books in total, which is exactly the same amount of books that I read last year, 2022. Most of the books I read this year were in Russian, 36 books. Then 18 books were in English, 9 in Polish, 4 in Spanish, 3 books were in Ukrainian, and also 3 were in Belarusian. It was an interesting year, my year in books, if I may say so in English. There were some great rereads. I reread Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, also Kashtanka, a story by Anton Chekhov, and some other books I remember from my childhood and want to refresh my memories. Also this year I found and read some great science fiction novels, some interesting books about language and the brain, some books about on creative writing and many more. I'll try to put a list of all 73 books I read this year in the description box down below, but I'm not sure if the YouTube description box will be large enough to contain all of the books. So if not, you can always find that list on my website, silentpolyglot.com, where I talk and write about languages I'm learning and books I'm reading. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about only my favorite ones, best 7 books that I read this year, 2023, in English, Polish, Ukrainian, Russian, and Belarusian. And in English, without any doubt, it was Among the Hidden by Margaret Peterson Haddix. Actually, it's the first book in her Shadow Children series that contains 7 books. And after finishing this first one, I read them all, of course. But this first book, Among the Hidden, was the best of all. This is a story about a boy. His name is Luke. And he lives in a strange society where families are allowed to have only 2 children. And Luke happened to be the third child in the family. So his parents are hiding him his entire life. He lives in the attic, can't go outside, he doesn't have any friends. And then suddenly something happens and the adventure begins. It was an interesting and believable story with great characters, full of life, and the ideas discussed in the book were very important. Also, the author had such rich vocabulary. I used my dictionary many times while reading this book and the other books in the series too, which was really good for my English. So I would highly recommend this book to anyone who loves good dystopian middle grade novels, and also to anyone who learns English and who is looking for an interesting book to read. The next best book was written in Polish. It's called Mój język prywatny, słownik autobiograficzny. In English, I think it's literally my private language, an autobiographical dictionary. The author is Jerzy Bralczyk. He's a famous Polish linguist and, in my opinion, absolutely fantastic writer. The way he writes, the way he feels the word, the Polish language itself, that's just amazing. I read this book aloud to practice my Polish pronunciation, so it was a very slow read, and I really enjoyed every sentence, every word in the process. I think that book is probably what I need today at my stage of Polish language learning. A dictionary of simple words and the talented author who can explain them in other words, in his own words. And I'm definitely going to find and read the other books written by this author. The next best book was also written in Polish. It's called Medaliony, Medallions in English. It's a small collection of short stories written by Zofia Nałkowska. She was a member of a committee for the investigation of Nazi crimes in Poland, and she described in that short book what some people did to other people, described with no emotion, very matter-of-factly, and this all makes these stories even more terrifying. I think this is a book that everyone should read to remember. The next best book was written in Belarusian. It's also about the Second World War. It's called Альпійская балада, Alpine Ballad in English. The author is Васіль Быкаў. This is a story about a Soviet soldier who was born in Belarus, and also about an Italian girl whose name is Julia. They have just escaped from a Nazi concentration camp somewhere in Alps. She doesn't know his language. He doesn't know hers, but they, two of them, have to survive together. You know, many years ago, when I was at school, I read this book in Russian, and I was fascinated by the beauty of land, by the beauty of language, and by the story itself. Back then, I didn't even realize that this story was originally written in Belarusian, and only after that translated to Russian. So this year, I decided to read this book again, but this time in its original language, Belarusian. And again, I was fascinated by the language, by the story itself. So I would highly recommend this book to anyone interested in Soviet history, and also to anyone who wants to read a good story that is really hard to forget. The next best book was written in Ukrainian. It's called Marія. In English, it's titled Marія, A Chronicle of Life by Улас Самчук. This book was recommended to me by one of my subscribers here on YouTube. I hope she is watching me now, so I can thank her for this really great recommendation, because I think it was one of the most emotionally powerful books that I read recently. It's a story about a Ukrainian woman called Marія, also about her family, and about Ukrainian village life from 19th century until the terrible years, the famine of 1932, 1933. It was a very sad book, uneasy to read, but at the same time a book that I read in 3 days because I just couldn't put it down. Great story, lyrical, and very emotional. So if you haven't heard about this book before, if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. Yeah, it's sad, but it's beautiful. And now to the Russian language. This year, of all books of all 36 books that I read in Russian, I chose the two best books, and both of them are about the great poet. Also, both these stories are told from a woman's point of view. The first one is called Sophia Petrovna, written by Lydia Чуковская. This is a story of a middle-aged woman whose name is Sophia Petrovna. She lives in Leningrad, works as a typist. Her son Kolya is a communist. All goes well for her. But then suddenly something happens. Her son is arrested, and suddenly she turns from a decent Soviet citizen to the mother of an enemy of the people. Beautifully written story, a story that definitely I will never forget. The sense of loss and despair was so real, so palpable. The author certainly knew how to choose the right words. So, really great book, highly recommended. Actually, this book edition includes 3 different novels. The first one is Sophia Petrovna, I was just talking about, and the other 2 is Спуск под воду and Прочерк. I haven't read them yet, but I will definitely read them soon. And now, my absolute favorite of the year 2023, Крутой маршрут, Steep Route by Евгения Гинзбурg. This is a 2-part book. If I remember it right, the first part in English titled Journey into the Whirlwind, and the second part is Within the Whirlwind. This is a memoir about the author's, Evgenia Gинзбурg's, life, how she was falsely accused of anti-Soviet agitation, and spent many years firstly in prisons and then in labor camps in Kolyma. And she managed not only to survive there. After she was released from the labor camp, she also wrote this amazing story of her life. And it was so brilliantly written, clear, honest, and with attention to every detail. I'd say to every detail we need to know. And to me, it's one of the most powerful and memorable books that I have ever read in my life. Book that, in my opinion, everyone should read at least once. And I will definitely go back and reread it in the future. So, those were my top 7 favorite books that I read in 2023 in different languages. You may ask, why didn't I mention best books in Spanish here? In fact, this year in Spanish, I was concentrating on reading only Harry Potter books and nothing more. And I decided not to mention it because I've already talked about reading Harry Potter in different languages several times in my channel. I hope next year I will complete my task on reading Harry Potter books in Spanish and start to read other books in that language. And now I would love to hear what were your favorite books of the year 2023. Please let me know in the comments down below. I would absolutely love to hear all your thoughts and book recommendations, because I'm always looking for a good book to read. You know, that's really fantastic that today, thanks to YouTube, we can recommend good books to each other, our favorite books and books in various languages. Thank you so much for watching. Please keep warm this winter and happy reading. Bye!